Okay, let's just dive right into this, shall we? Today we're exploring a concept called illegal focus, and we're going to uncover why literally everything you were taught about studying hard might actually be the exact thing causing your burnout. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to completely deconstruct the way you approach learning and deep work. You know, the traditional narrative always tells us, hey, if you're distracted, just push harder, grind it out. But what if that exact mindset is the reason that student a year below you is currently lapping you? Today, we're breaking down a highly specific protocol centered entirely around a 5-minute pre-study ritual. And honestly, it feels almost like cheating. But it's not magic, it's just neuroscience applied with absolute surgical precision.
So I really want you to think about your own exhaustion for a second. Seriously, why does studying harder just make you more burned out? We look at these top-tier students, like the ones prepping for China's absolutely ruthless Gaokao exam. For context, this is a single test that dictates their college, their major, and honestly, often their family's entire financial future. The pressure is just unimaginable. Yet, under that immense weight, some of these students don't just survive it, they absolutely thrive. Do they somehow have more hours in the day than we do? Of course not. But as we're going to see, they aren't relying on the brute force studying methods that lead straight to a wall of exhaustion.
To really understand this, let's take a quick mental trip to Shanghai. Picture this, it's 5 a.m. Right now, there are 17-year-olds who have already been awake, fully functioning, and operating for an hour. And the kicker here, it is not because they are forced to, it is totally by design. They're operating on this highly engineered system that the Western school system just completely misses. They know a fundamental truth. Your brain doesn't actually understand the difference between I want to study and I don't want to study. It only understands chemical states.
Which brings us to Section 1, the myth of willpower, and why you actually need a chemical state.
We need a massive paradigm shift right here. We need to realize that your brain doesn't need more discipline. Actually, scratch that. It needs the right chemical code. The traditional education system, it taught you how to memorize stuff, sure, but it completely failed to teach you how to engineer your own brain chemistry. We really have to shatter this myth that success is just a matter of having an iron will. Relying on willpower is literally a losing game. It runs out, it leads straight to burnout, and it requires you to constantly fight temptation. It's exhausting. Systems, on the other hand, systems require zero willpower. They rely on designed environments that physically block distraction, which lets you trigger a flow state automatically. Studies on those elite East Asian students show they don't have some superhuman willpower, no way. They just use systems, like shared study rooms where phones are strictly banned. They wipe temptation off the map entirely.
Moving right along to Section 2, hacking your neurochemistry and relying on purely biological states.
You see, focus isn't just a conscious choice you force yourself to make. It is purely a biological state, and it is governed by very specific chemicals. If you are constantly feeling distracted, it's largely because you're trying to force a behavioral output without actually giving your brain the chemical input it needs to sustain it. So, let's build out our focus toolkit. First, you've got dopamine. This is your hype fuel. It doesn't reward you just for finishing. It actively pushes you toward the finish line. Then there's norepinephrine. Think of this as the sniper. It kills the background noise and narrows your focus down to a single point. Next is acetylcholine. This acts as the scalpel, literally reshaping your neuron connections while you learn. And finally, serotonin, which dictates your frustration tolerance. It's the difference between pushing through a really tough math problem or just slamming your laptop shut in defeat. To get into deep focus, we have to activate these exact chemicals.
All right, Section 3, eliminating invisible cognitive leaks, or how to clean the battlefield.
But here's the catch. Before we can trigger those powerful focus chemicals with our 5-minute ritual, we have to address the absolute first law of this entire protocol. You cannot engineer a perfect chemical state in a polluted environment, period. Borrowing some wisdom from 2,500 years ago, Sun Tzu perfectly frames our objective here. The battle's won before it even starts, by prepping the battlefield. Your study environment is your battlefield, and it must be surgically cleaned out. And I'm not just talking about putting your phone on silent or flipping it face down. No, if it is in the same room, it is a liability. Your battlefield has to be entirely emptied of temptation before you even sit down in your chair.
So what happens when you don't prep that battlefield? Well, it leads to this concept called attention residue. This is absolutely crucial to understand. It's an invisible cognitive leak that happens when your brain is just processing the mere possibility of a distraction. You know that unread text notification that hasn't even popped up yet, but you know it might? Your brain is literally spending energy waiting for it. This exact phenomenon completely explains why 2 hours of quote-unquote studying might only give you 20 minutes of actual productive work.
And here is the devastating statistic that brings this all together. 23. Your brain needs between 8 and 23 minutes to get back into deep focus after just a single interruption. Think about that.
So when you think you're just taking a harmless 5-second glance at your phone, you aren't just losing 5 seconds. You are paying a heavy tax of up to 23 minutes of your absolute best brain power, just to claw your way back to the level of focus you were at before you looked away.
Which brings us to the core of everything today. Section 4, the 5-minute pre-study ritual and how to trigger sniper mode.
Now we reach the absolute beating heart of this system, the true focal point of this explainer, that 5-minute pre-study ritual. Once your environment is surgically clean and those cognitive leaks are plugged up tight, this ritual is the exact mechanism that acts as a switch. It drops those focus neurochemicals we talked about earlier totally on demand. The secret sauce behind the 5-minute ritual? Classical conditioning. Think about it. Just like an athlete has a strict, unvarying pre-game routine that basically yells at their nervous system, hey, it's game time, you must apply this to your own attention. By repeating the exact same physical sequence every single time you study, you are training your nervous system to link that sequence with entering sniper mode. It takes about 7 to 10 consistent reps to really lock this association into your brain, but once it's there, it's powerful.
So here are the 4 non-negotiable steps of the 5-minute ritual. Step 1. Sit in the exact same physical spot every single time. Step 2. Introduce the exact same sensory trigger. Maybe that's a specific type of tea, a certain scent in the room, or a dedicated deep work playlist. Step 3. Write down a specific goal in exactly 1 sentence. Not something vague like study math, but highly specific like solve 12 calculus problems. And Step 4. Set a visible timer and begin with 0 negotiation. You absolutely must run this exact sequence whether you feel motivated or not, because that ruthless consistency, that is exactly why the conditioning works in the first place.
All right, moving to Section 5, sustaining the flow state without burning out.
Okay, so once you've activated that intense, borderline illegal feeling focus to the 5-minute ritual, how do you actually keep it going? Well, you need macro scaffolding to keep it running for hours without frying your circuits. You've got to understand that your brain operates on physiological cycles called ultradian rhythms. Elite students hack this biological cycle. Here's how it works. From minute 0 to 90, you are in peak capacity for deep work. But right around the 90-minute mark, that capacity naturally ends, and it's followed by a 20-minute natural crash. If you try to force a 6 consecutive hour of study while completely ignoring this cycle, it doesn't result in more learning, it just gives you fatigue disguised as effort.
And the real secret to making this 90-minute cycle work repeatedly? It's actually hidden right there in the rest block. Real rest has to be boring on purpose. 0 screens allowed. None. If you open your phone during those 20 minutes of rest, you are still actively consuming stimulation. You aren't resting, you are just draining the battery for your next 90-minute cycle. You need to walk around, stretch, look at natural sunlight. You have to let the brain truly, fully reset.
Now, to absolutely maximize this entire system, you can actually stack chemical advantages right on top of it. Before you even start that 5-minute ritual, try splashing cold water on your face and hands for about 30 seconds. That creates a measurable spike in norepinephrine. Then add in some green tea. The combination of caffeine for alertness plus L-theanine to smooth out the anxiety creates this incredibly calm, jitter-free energy. When you stack all these physiological tweaks, the cold water, the green tea, the 5-minute activation ritual, and a strict 90-minute deep work block, you generate that undeniable, hyper-productive, illegal focus.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Ask yourself, are you fighting your biology or are you engineering it? The difference between a student who burns out and one who effortlessly succeeds isn't some magical, innate talent. It's simply that one relies on a finite pool of willpower and the other relies on bulletproof systems like the 5-minute pre-study ritual. It is time to stop just surviving the traditional memorization system and start weaponizing your own brain chemistry. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you test out this protocol tomorrow. Go see the results for yourself.